Well, all right, physical science teachers, we're now going to jump down to the suggested pacing guide. Now, I do want to point out, Chapter 1, it will have all the same components there, but since Chapter 1 is a bit more of a kind of pick and choose activities, the basics of science, I want to actually start with this one, Chapter 5. That's actually going to be a bit more reflective of the majority of your suggested pacing guide. So we're actually going to go down to Chapter 5. I'll show you everything that's available to you and how this really is the core of how you will be lesson planning and finding resources for engaging and comprehensive lessons. So we'll start off at the top. Notice that the actual title is actually a link, and that actually is just a link to a picture of what you can find in your book, which is the skills and knowledge. This is actually where all the objectives are listed out, the questions students will be answering. So all of that information is actually embedded within this suggested pacing guide, but if you just want to briefly look at that, you could go to the book. It's also pictured there. Each chapter in our book also comes with this challenge question, and I got the pictures for those as well. So the idea behind the challenge questions is at the end of the chapter, hey, maybe a student could, and they're more like posters, so the question's down here at the bottom. Can they answer these questions using what they've learned now? And so maybe you can use those as a bonus or a writing prompt, whatever you would like. But those are linked there in a nice, I made sure it's a high quality poster as well, so the image quality is good. All right, so then we got the student learning objectives. All those objectives that were listed out in that skills and knowledge, I converted those over into a I can, so student-friendly objective language. And you can also see that these are numbered, and those correspond, if you come down to the actual activities, to these. So objectives 1 through 5 are covered in these activities. Objectives 6 through 10 are covered. So now you can actually tie specific activities to specific objectives when you're doing your lesson planning. So if I'm creating my lesson, I'm doing these activities, I can go find the objectives that best fit to what I'm doing, and that should help a lot. You don't have to keep these word for word, tailor them to whatever you will actually be doing in the class, but I've seen a lot of schools are requiring the use of student I can objectives, so this should make that much quicker. I've talked about in the scope and sequence video about how each chapter will start off with a guiding phenomena. This is actually the first activity of each chapter. So while this is activity 65, the first activity in the chapter is actually 64, which introduces students to this idea. And then if we come down, the last activity, I believe for this one is activity 76, we'll actually go back and review that idea about breaking bricks. So keep that in mind as you are doing your chapters, that you can start each chapter with those phenomena. Your standards that align to that chapter, let me undo that, are listed out here. And just like on the scope and sequence, if you want more details on the standard, you can open up the item spec to get that. But I also know sometimes lesson plans just require to have a standard listed. You can just copy and paste that over and save yourself some time. As we are coming down, this is where all the actual content is at. We are going to start over on the right, and then we'll jump over to the resources on the left. This is your BioZone activities. Our new resource, BioZone, has the physical science. I've got the book somewhere around here, out of reach. So, up there it is. So I really want to quickly go over what is listed here. I'm going to have a separate video that shows you the BioZone side of things. So do check out that video that covers all the stuff on BioZone. But I've listed out the different activities that you should be hitting on for that week. And the one thing that I did link to, so you'll notice that there's some links over here. And what those are is within BioZone, and I explain this here. On each activity on your navigation, you get the activity in a digital format, so students can do it digital, or you can have them looking at the book. It gives you PowerPoint slides that go along with the activity that's going on. Oftentimes they have videos that are linked that are aligned to the content that they're learning. They also have great 3D models that are super interactive. But then they also have web links. And these web links, they can be a bunch of different things, but they could be, so a lot of them go to Khan Academy. I won't show you that one. Quite a few to Khan Academy from the get-go. This one actually goes to a PhET simulation on friction, so sometimes they'll have simulations. What I really like is they have different simulations from resources that I've never seen before, so it's a good way to learn about different resources out there. So like here's an example where it's a collision simulation, but not from one of our typical online resources. So now you have something else available to you for students to investigate, and it gives you good graphs and data as well. You'll also see articles in these. So if you want students to do some reading and dialoguing, there'd be articles listed there, as well as a few videos, but typically their videos are linked separately. I'll show you one, I think it must be down here with gravity. Here it is. This is something that I've used to explain orbits all my career of teaching, but I never had this simulation that shows you, so assuming that you have a cannon up high on this mountain, this is a planet. If you fire with a certain velocity, gravity is going to pull it down. What happens if you increase the velocity? Well, gravity is going to take longer to pull it down and goes further. What happens if we get more? It's going to make it further, and notice now we're starting to look like an orbit. And in fact, just barely made it. It should kind of come right back around to its starting position. So boom, now we know, hey, you get enough speed going, your gravity is still pulling you down, but you've moved fast enough to the side. So I love that this was available because I try to teach that to kids. This makes it so much easier to visualize. So sometimes you find golden gems like that. So I've linked to those just so that those are easier. But again, these are coming from the Biozone resource as well. So that's to help your planning out. As we move over to the left, you have 3 columns of other resources that you can use to supplement or build upon what you're doing with Biozone. I've linked to different videos over here on the side. If physical sciences isn't your background, these could be useful for you for kind of picking up and learning things as you go. I have short videos that you could play as snippets as part of class. The longer videos, you could certainly play a snippet of it or put it into a Nearpod and add questions. So different options for that. But here are some videos that tie into what students are learning. And then you have your different digital simulations. So here's your gizmos and different PhET that tie into the specific activity or topics being taught. One thing that I do need to add in is there are labs that go along with the Biozone activities, and I need to list those out as well, and so you can see what activities are labs. I'll figure out a way for displaying that. And then finally, we have access to study.com and Nearpod. I have 2 separate videos that'll go into more detail on using those 2 resources, and it looks as of right now, I haven't organized all the Nearpod stuff yet, but you will see different Nearpod activities listed out here in this column, and you'll have your study activities listed out in this column. These aren't all of the resources available on Study or Nearpod. These are just some that I picked out from a larger course sample. So if I click on this logo for study.com, and I'm not currently logged in, so it's not going to look the same as if I was logged in. But I can briefly show you that this is actually a full course broken down by standards. So since we're actually in the PS2 standard block, sorry, I opened it up. You have all of these different activities available to you. Notice how many there are. So like way more than what I could list out. You're never going to use all of them, but here are a ton of resources at your disposal for engaging students in a much deeper level. So feel free to use as many of those as make sense. And the same thing will be true for the Nearpod. I'll list out a few of them. I think I have at least this folder. Don't click on that one. You want to click on the actual folder. So notice it says Nearpod folder. And I've organized all the videos, PowerPoints, and activities that they have into a folder system. So that way it's all organized in one spot and you can find what they have pre-made. Once you get to using Nearpod at a regular basis, you can also edit, create your own, but that is up for you guys. So here we go. We are in Unit 1 in the Chapter 5 folder, and you can see how many activities and lessons and resources are available. I'm not going to list all of those on the curriculum map, but you just know, wow, you have all this available to you for students to help them learn. And that's pretty much kind of what you're to expect in your planning area. Each chapter ends with a chapter assessment. And then also I'll sometimes remind you about the unit project. Typically the project will be the last thing after the last chapter, but this one, the egg drop, just makes more sense to do here because activity 75 actually does the egg drop as well. So that is basically it. Once you get down to the bottom of the page after you've done all your chapters, if you want to jump over to quarter 2, you can use this to jump over there quickly. If you want to get back up to the top of the page, just click on this and you'll get beamed up right back up to the top. All right, hopefully you guys see how the pacing guide can help you to bring resources into your lesson planning to make it easier for making lessons that will engage your students. And I think different teachers are going to gravitate towards different resources, but feel free to use as many as you want. Awesome. I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.